In this video, I'll demonstrate 3 examples on how to simplify complex fractions. Starting with question A, you'll notice that this mega fraction contains fractions in the numerator and fractions in the denominator. There are several ways that you could approach this question, although the best approach would be to simplify the top, find a fraction, and then simplify the denominator, find a fraction, and then divide the two. To do this, I'll label this part 1 and this part 2. And to simplify the top, that's not hard to do. You need to find a common denominator between the two fractions. And the common denominator is 6, so I have to multiply this by 3 and this by 2. And this gives me 3 over 6 plus 4 over 6. Now that the denominators are the same, I can combine 3 and 4 together. We end up with 7 over 6. So the numerator of this expression is 7 over 6. Now we move on to the bottom two terms. We have 3 plus a quarter. Once again, the denominator for this term is a 1, so we have to make that into a 4. And that's done by multiplying it by 4. And this gives us 12 over 4 plus 1 over 4, and that's 13 over 4. So I have the new numerator and I have the new denominator. And it looks something like this, 7 over 6 over 13 over 4. Now, when you divide two fractions, you have to take the reciprocal of the second fraction and change the sign. So this expression can actually be written like this. And as suggested, you take the reciprocal of the second fraction and you flip the sign into multiplication, where now you have 7 times 4, which is 28, and 13 times 6, which is equal to 78. So you have 28 over 78. Reducing this fraction will give you 14 over 39. So let's write that in. Therefore, the final answer to this complex fraction is 14 over 39. Let's move on to part B. In part B, we have 1 plus a over b over 1 minus b over a. We'll use the exact same approach as we did in part A. I'll call this 1 and this is 2. Simplifying 1, we end up with, remember this 1 can be written as 1 over 1 plus a over b. I need to make the denominators the same, so I'll multiply this fraction by b, which leads me to b plus a over b. Now I'll handle the denominator. We have 1 minus b over a. To make the denominators the same, I multiply this fraction by a, and that leads me to a minus b over a. Now I have the case of this fraction divided by this fraction. Since we're dividing fractions, we take the reciprocal of this one, a over a minus b, and this becomes multiplication. If we multiply these two fractions, we end up with a bracket b plus a and b bracket a minus b. This represents the final answer for part B. Lastly, for part C, we have a similar case. Once again, I'll label this 1 and this 2. So starting at the top, we end up with 4a squared minus 1 over 4. And I have skipped a few steps, but hopefully you can derive what I've come up with by using the technique above. And the new denominator becomes 2a plus 1 over 2. We have a fraction over a fraction, and so we end up with 4a squared minus 1 over 4 times the reciprocal of this fraction, giving us 2 bracket 4a squared minus 1 over 4 bracket 2a plus 1. And you can further simplify this where it becomes 1 over 2, or simply the 2 at the bottom with nothing at the top. And so there you have it. 3 examples on how to simplify complex fractions.